Hey, Paul, welcome along. It's great to see you again. Well, I don't get to see you unless your little picture comes popping up. Some do, some don't. But it's great to be here again, chatting about things to do with ministry, particularly with children, youth, and families. And of course, more broadly, because of course what we do with children, youth, and families applies to ministry everywhere, really. Yes, just caught up with a colleague from Newcastle, who was in Newcastle, was head of Youth of Christ in Newcastle for a while, and we worked together down there, and he's now doing in Ipswich, doing some stuff with Youth of Christ International. And yeah, we were commenting about how, we see things happen in the church, and you have to pretend, that's new, and we've been doing it in youth ministry for years. So there you go. Anyway, welcome. How did I get into that? I don't know. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. For Southside, it is the Yagara and the Turrbal people. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. You may want to recognise the people who were the original custodians of the land where you are based. So welcome. As always, movie quote. So we're looking at acceleration again, and I thought, cool name, Acceleration 2, the next gear. There's no next gear, it just sounded like a good movie title. So quote comes from one in a couple of movies. Not telling you whether this is from the sequel or from the original. You'll have to guess. But the quote is, all for one and one for all. Where does that come from? All for one, or one and one for all. Not all and. So there you go. If you know where it comes from, pop it in the box down the bottom, comment box. You could win a prize. There you go. Anyway, so acceleration. So we've been exploring some ideas about ministry in a secular age, particularly coming out of lectures by Andy Root, and also some interaction with him and a lecture by Trip Fuller of Home-Baked Theology. And so we've been exploring some ideas around what they say about ministry in a secular age. Particularly the first 4 of their lectures was drawing on the work of Charles Taylor. Why do I think Charles Taylor's the wrong name? But I'm sure it's right. Charles Taylor, in his epic 700-odd page book, A Secular Age. And so he talks about, the world has moved from this place where it was almost unbelievable not to believe in God to a place where it's now almost unbelievable to believe in God, and how we've gone through various stages, and each of those has impacted and elements of it have remained. Last week, we started to delve into Rosa, who is a German philosopher. Charles Taylor being a Canadian philosopher with a Catholic background. Not sure what Rosa's faith background is, if Rosa has any. But so Rosa talked about, we see an acceleration in life, and particularly 3 areas of life. And we quickly skimmed through them last week, and then I stopped because I got to the end of my time. So we're going to continue on with this. So we see technological acceleration. So we have this acceleration, particularly in transport, communication, and production. And you just need to think about how the way we travel keeps getting faster. The way we communicate keeps getting faster. We get more and more communication. Production speeds up. COVID has had an impact on that, where transport and production have sort of slowed down, and so communication has ramped up. But we see those things. We see an acceleration in social life, where we have an acceleration in the decay rate, where things and the social life is changing so quickly. Remember, decay rate, how long it takes for something to become no longer of now. So, that's fab. We all know that was around in the 60s, 70s. It's obviously, if you went, that's fab, it's decayed. It's no longer of now. It's like, oh, that's what mum and dad or grandma said. Those sorts of things. Decay rate. And so Rosa uses the example of the typewriter versus the computer. You can go and see Hemingway's typewriter. You're not going to be able to go and see, Stephen King's computer that he wrote Carry On. It just gets turfed. So acceleration in technology, acceleration in social life. And the acceleration in technology led to a sort of focus on availability. So how do we make things available? Acceleration in social life leads us to think about accessibility. How are we accessible? So social life, everyone's got to be able to get in. And then an acceleration in the pace of life. That, life just gets busier and busier. And, technology, we no longer have to write a letter on a typewriter. We can quickly do it on the computer, but we suddenly get far more emails than we used to get letters. And so that amps up. And even sometimes people get strange letters in their letterbox with hand addressed. I was talking in the office today and David was like, oh, Wendy, you got this letter. It was hand addressed. I was thinking, what was it? It was just thanking a letter from me for fun in the Sundays. And I think that disappointed him. I think he was getting excited about this handwritten addressed envelope and what would be inside. What could be inside such a thing? But our pace of life has just gone, which leads to a focus on attainability. How do we keep going? How do we get all this stuff? This life goes on and on and on and on, quicker and quicker and quicker. And we all feel this. And Rosa says that this is something deep inside us. And that when we construct our church to accelerate, it has a spiritual effect on us and leads to alienation. So we can get caught up in these and we need to get the latest technology. We need to be using, we need our app. We need this latest technology. We need the best projectors we can get. We need the best sound system. We need to pull this in, pull that in. We need to, who can we include in all these things? What groups are there that we need to include into the church? How do we keep moving along? We need to do this, to do this. If we're trying to bring all these changes and all these accelerations, we are just, that has an effect on us and leads to alienation. That's right. I read to you last week the article from The Onion about a man on the cusp of having fun suddenly remembers every single one of his responsibilities. So it's sense of, we live in this world, but our world is going by so fast that we easily, in the middle of this world, we get stuck with, I'm alienated from the world. My brain is instantly going, how am I doing all the things that need to go? How do I keep all the balls in the air? I was having a conversation with someone today and they were sort of saying, feels like, I've got 7 balls in the air and I've only ever learnt to juggle 3. So we're trying to do all these things, keep all these things going. And so how do we engage in real life? Because in the back of our brains, we're working through everything else that we've got to go. You watch particularly young people, I'm in this situation, but I'm on this device finding out what else is going on, communicating with people about what things need to happen, stuff like that. And so if we think church needs to change, the change can just get fused up or co-opted into this acceleration. It's easy for us to go, we need to change, so we need to do these things. And it becomes an add-on to this acceleration. And these forms of accelerations have a sense of alienation. And so in that article from The Onion, the man almost relaxed. And all this makes him disconnected from himself, from reality, and from the possibility of our God being involved. I've just got to work through this stuff. Who has time to think about how God might be involved in this? He's just, I've got to pay the bills, and I've got to get ready for my sister to come and visit, and all these things. And so Rosa says what's imposed upon us is this, or are these equations. So m + plus m equals m to the power of, I forget what it is. There's a word. And I went, oh, remember what that word is? And I don't remember what that word is. But the equation m plus m equals m apostrophe thing. Money plus commodities equals more money. So if I've got money and I've got more things, then I can get more money. It's that production. Oh, if I put more money into this and buy more plant from my factory, then I can produce more, and then I can get more money. And then I can produce more and get more money. Or an educational area. K plus R equals K empowered. So knowledge plus research equals more knowledge. So if I have this knowledge and then I do some more research, then I'll get more knowledge. And I do more research and I get more knowledge. It's all about how do I get more? How do I get more? How do I get more? The equation for the church then often becomes M plus P equals M empowered. So members plus programs equals more members. So we've got these members. How do we do more programs? And if we just do more programs, then we'll get more people coming in and connecting. And then we'll put on more programs. And then they'll come in. And so we have this sense of how do we just get busier and busier. And our pace of life picks up and up. And we think we're bringing this change that's going to help the church. We're going to get more people. This has got to be good for the church. But is it, or are we just getting alienated? Rosa says to be careful that this change eats away at your soul. It alienates you. And Big Church realized you couldn't grow. Oh, he talked about this big church, I think in America, and realized, yes, it was a big church in America. They realized we can't grow if we can't get people out of the parking lot within 20 minutes. So, people just aren't going to come here if it takes them more than 20 minutes to get out of our parking lot. So they did this big campaign. They approached the city. They raised millions of dollars so that a ramp could come right near the church from the nearby freeway, so they could get people out of the church within 20 minutes. And Trip Fuller was saying, yeah, he'd been part of a church when they spent all this money sort of shoring up the car park, because it was sort of on this seaside that was eroding, and so they kept shoring it up and spending all this money. And he was talking to someone, they're like, you did what? You spent a whole heap of money on what? So we get caught up in these things. We've got to have the best car park, because if people can get out quickly, they're more likely to come. Is that really how God wants us to spend millions of dollars? Getting an on-ramp to the freeway? Hopefully you're sitting there going, that's... So we need to be careful, and that's, and again, it's easy to look at things like that and go, well, aren't they idiots? Why would you do that? But we need to also ask ourselves, where are we doing a similar type thing? Where do we get caught up in, if I just do this and invest this money or invest this time into this thing, people will come? Are we investing our people's time into the right programs? Or is there things that we need to get rid of? Are we investing people's time into programs when we should be investing them into connecting with God? So there is a logic that the only thing that is stable is what is growing. So if it's not at least stable, then it won't be growing. So we need to keep it going. Keep going. If we're getting a little bit of growth each year, that's great. So in church, if we don't see obvious growth, we think, well, what's the point? And it's the criticism that's sometimes thrown out at youth ministry. We have this youth group and we don't see them in church on Sunday. They're not giving to the offering. So we're not getting more members. We're not getting more money. Well, what's the point of throwing money into this thing? It's obviously not growing. It's obviously not working. It may be growing. It might be developing young people's discipleship. They might just not be connecting on Sunday morning. If we get caught up in this, cycle of, we just need to accelerate. We need to pick up these things. We need to get the new technology. We will see a rise in burnout and mental health because of that acceleration. We just can't keep going quicker and quicker and quicker. And so Andy Root, Taylor, Rosa talk about this desire to get a good life. And good life is harder to land at the present. Religion has been how to live in the moment. And when the present changes so fast, the good life is also projected into the future. So it's no longer, how do I have the good life now? But how do I do things so that I will have a good life in the future? Or how do I do things so that my children will have a good life? Okay, we won't go to church on Sunday because my child can go and play soccer. And he's going to become a superstar soccer player. So we'll give up on church on Sunday because this is more important. This will lead him to a good life. And maybe, when he gets older, he'll have time for church. But this is the good life. It's not like what's good now. It's what will be good into the future. Religion is not a way to embody the good life in that sense, but it's seen as a way to get there. So how is your religion going to help you to get to the good life? How is sending my son to youth group, to church, going to help them to have the good life? And if you can prove that, I'll send them. If not, well, we might go to some other program or some other thing that will lead them to a good life. And so one of the things Rosa and that ask is there a speed limit to things? E.g. to nature, is there just like global warming? We're just moving faster and faster and producing more and more stuff, and the world just can no longer cope with all that we are producing. And then if we slowed it down and let out more, the world could cope. But our faster and faster pace produces more and more waste, and boom, our world's in trouble. How are we the same? Where are we? So fast, so accelerated that we can't cope. We tend to want to speed up rather than remodel. So how do we just change what's going on instead of just, okay, we'll get faster, we'll do some more stuff. It's also seen around those arguments of how do we include others and how do we deal with big issues. I wrote a document after the assembly decision around same-gender marriage, and that there would be two definitions of marriage that people could hold to within the Uniting Church. That we could hold and live with two different definitions. That those who want to define marriage as between a male and a female can hold that. Those who want to define marriage as between two loving people can hold that. And that's probably not the correct wording for that. So anyone who's sitting there going, that's wrong, it probably is. Live with it. But I wrote a document talking about, well, how did we get to this? And went back to, well, to actually understand this, we need to understand that as we're making these decisions, that we're actually reading the Bible and interpreting it. And so went back to the decisions around women in ministry. And this got one of my people from back in Belmont. Or, why did you go back to there? But you need to go back and realise why we made that decision. Because it's easy to go, oh, why do we have women in ministry? Because the culture around us now accepts that. So we just did it. And so why do we allow same-gender marriage? Well, because the government decided the world around us would have that. So we just went with it. And it's like, oh, no. If that is the reason we made those decisions, that's actually wrong. We made the decision to have women in ministry because we started to look at what the Bible says, and particularly what Paul says, and went, hang on, we've actually been interpreting Paul wrong. Because Paul can't, in 1 Corinthians, say, a woman should have her head covered when she prays or prophesies in church, and then a couple of chapters later say, and women will be silent in church. You can't pray and prophesy in church with your head covered and be silent. They're obviously talking. Paul's obviously talking about something different than women speaking in church. And Paul obviously can't be against females leading when he talks about people like Juno, who he describes as an apostle. You sort of don't get any greater position in a sense within the church than apostle. And Paul talks about a female as one of those, which for a while we nicely just translated as a male name, because that's sweep that one under that carpet. We looked at it and we went, actually, how we're interpreting the Bible, it needs to change. It's not just about culture's made a change and we've changed it, but it's about we actually got back into what the Bible says. And so for many, the decision around same-gender marriage was not about, hey, the culture out there says it, but hang on, as we look at what the Bible says and how we interpret what it says about marriage, what it says about same-gender relationships and that hang on, we might have got it wrong. And we might have been reading stuff into it that wasn't actually there. But it's important for us to go through that journey of why we've made that change. And that's why I went, let's go through that journey of why we made the change with women. Let's go through the journey of why we made the change around the marriage. Because we need our people to do that. Because these decisions are not just caught up in the acceleration. And when we're just in the change and in the acceleration mode, it's easy to think that. And so, where does our faith stand? If we can just chuck it out because culture wants something different. No, we're making decisions carefully. And we need to sometimes slow them down. I'll get off my little soapbox. I'm an idiot. So we need to be cultivating communities which encourage an open spin to God. So remember, Charles Taylor talks about open spins and open takes and closed spins. So it should be an open spin towards God. When we have an open take, we're willing to look at the world with possibilities. Our take on the world, our view on the world is, there's possibilities, there's options. When we have a closed spin, it's like, well, I understand the world like this. And in my imminent frame, this is how I understand the world. So it's got to fit within this. If it doesn't fit within my little box, it's out. I spin it out. It's like, political spin. Hang on, this strange thing has just happened, so how do I explain it so it fits within my little box? And so we need to produce communities where there's this openness there's an openness to how we might interpret things, which allows an openness for God to play a part and for God to meet people and interact with people. That youth group can become how to live good life. If that's the case, it just adds to acceleration. And we talked about that with Andy Root's book about why people think youth ministry should end. If it's all about just that that have a good life, that acceleration, move, we've lost. And we tend to talk about the instrumentalize our relationships, or want to instrumentalize our relationships. Our relationships are about getting people to do something. I go and make a friend so that I can convert them to the faith. We have these people in church so they can do the things that we want for the programs to happen. And Andy Root said all his work has been around debunking that. From his doctoral thesis, the reimagining or revisiting relational youth ministry. That sense of, hang on, it's actually just about relationships for relationships' sake. And that if we have deep relationships, then faith stuff comes in. But it's not about, I have this relationship, so faith stuff. But that faith stuff pops out of the relationships that we have. And that's the story of ministry. We don't get caught up just in the racing along. But we need to, be together. And so the Christian event happens in just being together, the Christ event. That we fully understand who Christ is when we're together. Just spending time together. We're not, may not have a purpose. May not have a program. But we're together. And God turns up. And we discover God. And that's why story becomes important. Because I share my story of how God has interacted with me. It's not a program I share these points so that you will, believe and change your will, but I just share my story because this is how God has impacted my life. And maybe God will impact your life in the same way, or maybe I'll hear how God has impacted your life and you'll share something quite different and I'll learn from that. Why we're going to be doing mentoring. But yeah, so there's some thoughts. We're caught up in this world of acceleration and it's easy to think, hey, we need to start something new. How can we stop that and go, what are we doing? Where is God in what we're doing? And how are we allowing people to meet God? Not just to put on another program, not to use their relationships as a means to an end, but just to be wanting to be with people, to share with them, to build them. To learn from them. Yeah. We had an awesome opportunity on Sunday in the combined service. If you weren't at the combined service, go to our website. My brain is frazzled. Go to the website, go to worship, follow the link and watch the service on Sunday, because we had a combined service that was led by our young people, particularly Harrison Dunbar, who did an awesome job. And that reminds us, we have stuff to learn from young people. We don't just come with all the answers. We can learn from them. How do we stop? How are we present to listen to their stories? And to share our stories. To go along side by side. So, there's some thoughts. Take some time to slow down. To think about what's going on. Think about where God is at and how you can discover more, how it can help others to discover God more. Because we'll be all for one and one for all. Where did that come? So if you work it out. I'll let you have a couple of minutes early, Mark. You can just relax, stop. Don't race off to the next thing, just take your time. Have a good week. We'll see you next week, if not before. Bye.